Okay, hi class. I hope you're doing just fine so far. And what we're going to do today is we're going to actually colorize this car. It looks like a Plymouth Prowler, and we're going to learn some selection techniques and colorizing techniques as we go along. And I've already opened sportscar.tiff on my computer. I'd like you to do that, and I'd like you to do something really important, which is to duplicate it right away. If you recall, we don't just work on the original. So let's call this Sports Car Gold. Okay. All right. There we go. So we have that, and let's immediately close the original. All right. So here we have our duplicate. And the first thing that we're going to do is we could make what's called a marquee selection. Now it's called a marquee because you can see it makes this kind of dotted line that's moving, also known as a marquee, kind of like an old-time movie theater, how they had the lights that went around in a circuit like that. That's why it's called a marquee. They also call it marching ants. You can call it whatever you want, but that's what it is. Okay, so you can make a selection that way. And if we were so inclined, we could grab the move tool, we could grab that, move it, and so forth. We don't want that, so I'm going to go to edit, and I'm going to say step backwards. It'll go back where I want it. Another thing that we can do that's pretty important is we can crop. Okay, so I've made my selection, and I've got the crop tool. You may notice that as soon as I grabbed it, the area that wasn't selected by the marquee is kind of grayed out, and I'm going to click in it. There we see the rule of thirds, okay, which we'll probably learn a little bit about, but it's a way of getting balance in a photo either symmetrically or asymmetrically, and you can see it's 3 across, 3 down, pretty straightforward, rule of thirds. Okay, so I've selected that image, and I'll go ahead and I'll double click it. Now my crop is complete. Okay, so what I'd like to do is I'd like to go ahead and save this image. Okay, so let's go to save. We'll save it, and let's complete the crop. There we go. And all right, Sports Car Gold. Let's go ahead and save this as a TIFF. You can also save this as a PSD file, which is a Photoshop native file. We're going to say no compression, and we're going to say OK. So now we have our image, and we want to zoom in on it. So I'm just going to hold down the Control key and hit 0, and that zooms us in to the photo. Okay. Now we've got a nice big image of our Plymouth Prowler so that we can do our modifications. Now there are a few other tools, such as the lasso tool, and if we hold the mouse down, we can see that there's a number of different types. There's the polygonal tool and the magnetic lasso tool. Polygonal is great for things like straight lines, like the lines of, let's say, a lighthouse, and magnetic tends to detect the edge where it thinks you might want to make a selection. There's also the magic wand tool, which we'll be using in a moment, and the quick selection tool that we'll be using after that. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's choose the magic wand tool. And you notice up here at the top there's a number of different tool settings. Okay, one of them is, well, we can just make selections. Another is we can make selections where things get added on to our selections. We can subtract from our selections. We can combine selections. So right now what I'd like to do is I'd like to add to our selections, and let's start with the tolerance of 32, I think as shown in the book. Anti-aliasing is a way of making photo images less jagged. Okay, it tends to smooth the edge, and so we'll keep anti-alias selected, as well as contiguous, which kind of has a setting of understanding how close things are that are like other things from a color standpoint. Okay, We won't do select and mask yet, but we'll get to that. Okay, now when we have that tool selected, we can click here, okay, and we see that part of the hood is selected, and we know that because we have a marquee around it. Because we have Add selected, as I click more and more, it adds to the selection. Okay, we'll add on the rear view mirrors. Okay, whoops, that's too much. That's not a problem though, because we're going to hit Control-Alt-Z. And what that does is it steps us back one step. Okay, and that's what I'm going to do here. If I get too much selected, like I just did, I'm going to do Control-Alt-Z. Not a big deal. Okay. Another thing I'd like you to keep in mind is that you're doing art. Okay, you're really trying to make something nice, so take your time as you do this. I just did it again, not a big deal. Control-Alt-Z, and I go back for a little bit more. Okay, I want to get this fender in. Okay, and let's get this other fender, and I'm just going to keep working. I see I went too far, so I'm going to Control-Alt-Z. I can also do a little finer control. Okay, you can make this down to as small of a tolerance as you want, and this is kind of a trial and error sort of thing. Okay, oftentimes, let's try 15. Well, you can see that that will select increasingly smaller areas. Okay, such as here. Okay, got too much. We don't want that tire. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a few more selections, okay? But there's another great tool, and it's called the Quick Selection tool, okay? And what that does is it allows us to select things, add things, subtract things, and we can also change the size of it, okay? 30 might be good. Let's start with 20, okay? As you're doing this, try to be a little bit more conservative about what you do. And right now, we're going to subtract. So right now, we don't want these this part of the tire, for example. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to click and move those pixels that were selected out of the way. All right. Now I'm going to make some quick edits here. I don't want this video to run too long. I'm sorry, and so I'm going to just make some quick edits. And then what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to do a little bit more finer detail editing. Okay, so you can see here I'm getting more and more of the car selected and in the color that I want. And in fact, let's go ahead and let's click a couple times here and see, was that good? Nope, not quite, because I got the tire, and we just don't want to colorize the tire on this car. Okay, and we do want to select this bumper. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch back to Add. Okay, and here we go. All right, we're adding that bumper in. Slowly. There we go. We're just taking it easy, and that's the name of the game. Take it easy. You know, keep adding, keep subtracting. You know, do things so that you end up with a good result. Time spent here now is going to make it much easier to make a nice image later. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, leave that, and another thing that I can do, you know, because these bumpers are a little bit hard, I can zoom in. Okay, so let's go ahead, let's zoom in, and I have good control with my tools. I'm still going to use the Quick Selection tool, and I'm going to add just a little bit, but this time I'm going to take the pixel size down, okay, down to, let's say, about 9 or 10. And what I can do is, as I am adding, you can see I'm just slowly adding in this area, okay? And that way I can get finer and finer control I better go scroll over here because I see something happened, and yep, sure enough, I got a little bit of the tire. So I'm going to hold the Alt button and the magnifying glass. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit, and so I'm going to grab the, there we go, the quick selection tool. Okay, I'm going to make sure that I'm subtracting, and I'm going to subtract. Okay, just like that. I see that 9 pixels is a little too small. I'm just not getting enough change. And so let's go back to up around 30, 32 pixels. Okay, and here we see, there we go. Now we're getting a little better control. Okay, whoops, we just deleted the whole fender. That's not a big deal. We're going to grab the Add button, okay, and we're just going to add to it. Okay, so like I said, I'd like you to spend more time on this than I'm spending, okay, because I don't want the video to be too long, but that's what you do. Okay, and another thing that we can do is we can go ahead and clean things up with the lasso tool. Now the lasso tool is kind of it's the kind that you draw with. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab it, and whoops, looks like I grabbed it, so I'm going to step backwards. Okay, and I'm going to select my there we go. We have our reselect. Okay, so I went to the selection menu. For a moment there, it had disappeared. Okay, and so I have my selection. And before I do anything, you know, one of the things that I'd like to do is I'd like to save this selection. Okay, when you do a lot of work, make sure that you save. Okay, so we're going to make it a new channel, and we're going to call it Color. Okay, there we go. And that is a saved selection. Okay. Now we can go to our lasso tool. Okay, and if we want to, we can make a selection like here. Let's try doing a subtraction. Okay, and let's say we want to cut out that parking light or that turn signal. Well, we can do that. Okay. And so in this way you use the selection tools to add, subtract, and so forth. Okay? All right. So our next video is going to be about once you save your selections, okay, what you can do with them by kind of coloring them and using the alpha channel. Okay, now one last thing I'd like to point out here is that we created a number of channels. Let me go to Control 0 so we can make the whole image zoom out. Okay, and notice here is the RGB, the red, green, blue value, and that's the entire photo. It's all together. Okay, then we also have red. Okay, that would be what's in the photo that's red, that's blue, that's green, and so forth. I'm sorry, red, green, blue. And then, of course, we have the mask itself, the thing that we were masking. Okay? And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next video.